Hi, in this video we'll have a look at how to set up TestNg and create your tests in Java, how to run them, and also how you can group them, etc. Here I have a Maven project. So if you have a Maven project, you need TestNg in it, and for that you can add this dependency here. So this is org.testng and I'm using version 7.3.0. Also, if you're using STS or Eclipse, you can go to marketplace and add the TestNg plugin. Next, let's have a look at some of the tests and how to create them. So I have a class called stock test, and once you install the plugin of TestNg, you will start getting some things like this. So you have a run all, and on every test you will get run, debug, etc. Every test in TestNg needs a @test annotation on it, and you can use assert true to check if the value you're passing should be true. You can use assert false. There are a lot of such asserts you can use. So you have assert equals, you have assert same. Also you can do a assert equals deep. If you think a method might throw an exception or an expected exception, you can just give an accepted exception here, and you can give a list of exceptions it might throw. So here it might throw a null pointer as ISIN is null and I'm firing a toString on it. There is an interesting feature in TestNg known as data provider. Data provider basically is a function which provides data to a test. It can run in parallel. So let's see an example here. We have a valid format of ISINs, and this is used in our test to test if it valid is true. The data provider is valid format. If you see, the name is valid format, the same name is given here to valid format. You can run it parallelly, so you can give a thread count. If you have a lot of data and you are running a test, you can run it parallelly. So I have a thread count of 3 and invocation count of 1. So the data will be passed to this particular method once, and we will have 3 threads running it. If you don't want to give a thread provider, you can simply create a string array, something like this, and you can pass the invalid format in a loop and test it out. This will be a single threaded one. So these are some of the simpler tests you can do. The second class I have here is a microservice. So you can write a before method. So this is basically the setup methods we used to write in JUnit. So in setup, we are instantiating a HTTP client. So we are using a basic HTTP client builder, create.build. Then we are calling HTTP client.execute on a JSON placeholder type code.com/post. This is a mock service you get on internet to test out your HTTP calls, and it's a HTTP get, and we get a response here. Once the setup is done, you can start executing your test. So I have a test method called getResponseCountTest, and our annotation here is taking a timeout. So it's 200 milliseconds. What we are seeing here is that in 200 milliseconds we should get a response to our request, and I am grouping it as first pass. So other tests are basically depending on the first test, so I am giving a first pass. I'll show you how group can be used further. So here, once you place a get request, you get a JSON array. I'm just reading the JSON array from the response and appending it line by line to data. Then that data is being passed to JSON array, and JSON array's length is being tested here. So we should get 100 records, and this is being tested here using assert equals. Once this one goes through, we know we have data and everything, and so our next test, which says get status code test, actually depends on first pass. So this test depends on this test, and once the first test goes through fine, only then the next test will be run or it will be skipped. So here we are doing assert equals to get a status code and check it if it is 200. You can prioritize tests, and for that you will have to give test argument known as priority, and this can go in The usual priority of method is 0, so -1 gets an upper hand on 0 and executes before get status code. And at last we have after method, which is basically a cleanup where you can close the client and the response. If you run this, the setup failed this time because we don't have an internet connection, and other tests were actually skipped. That's a good thing. So now we have internet, and let's fire the test again. And now the setup went through, but we got a timeout exception. So we got a timeout exception on get response count, and hence the other tests which depend on first pass are skipped. So we got timeout because we have a smaller number here. Let's save this, make it as 2000 milliseconds and run. And now all the 3 tests passed. So this is how you can actually write your unit test for a microservice. Next, you can create a source test resources by clicking on the project and then clicking build path, new resource folder, and you can put the folder name there. So it will be source test resources. Inside that you can create a test.xml. This test.xml will have the main tag known as suit. You can put whatever you want here to indicate which test you are running. You can give classes which should run, and then just click here and run the test suite. So now stock test should run through, and our test passed. One test failed, others have passed. You can give packages. So test.xml is a place where you can systematically organize your tests. There are a lot of XML tags which expose a lot of powerful TestNg features. For that, you can go to testng.org and find the documentation there. There are a lot of things we have not covered in this short video, like listeners and factory, etc., which if you want I can cover in next video. Thanks for watching.